Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're covering really follows our killer trend we've been having. We did Freddy, we did Jason. Next up, a killer whale. We're talking Free Willy 2, movie I watched a ton on VHS as a kid. And so it made it even more fun to talk to this week's guest, actor Neal Matarazzo, a Jersey guy. Who doesn't love Jersey guys? We talk about his journey from Jersey to Hollywood, going from like a small budget film, his first one, to landing, right out of the gate, Free Willy 2. And then we talk about, playing a cop, researching roles, becoming a series regular on Brooklyn South, working with Bryan Cranston. Cool story about that. Also talked about his commercial work, his NJ acting studio that you can check out. It's actually right by where I work in New York City, which is pretty cool. So be sure to, if you're in the tri-state area, you're anywhere in the country, he does over Zoom. He can help you out with auditions, acting techniques, things like that. Great dude. So I'll put that in the link in my episode notes. And yeah, we covered it all. Neal was a lot of fun. Love talking about his career. Love talking about just acting in general. I always think it's cool when we talk about technique. And he had a wild story about when he was doing researching for a role. It led him to getting a private tour of the White House. It's a great story. So before I start the interview, please, if you're new here, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, you can watch an unedited version of this in video. If you want to see Neal's face and you want to see my face. It's still fun, but you're here. Why would I send you somewhere else? But after you listen to this, you can check out some of the other videos, even watch this video, and be sure to subscribe there as well. That helps us out. And without further ado, here is actor Neal Matarazzo.
Yeah, Neal, this is great. I'm happy we connected. And I always love talking to people that are from New Jersey, because I'm from New Jersey, and it's like, I think we're different than other people. But also I've heard, like, when I lived in Oregon for a little bit, like, there's just something different about people from New Jersey. And I can't wait to hear about your journey from Jersey to acting. So how did it all begin? You grew up in Patterson, or is that just where you were born?
That's just the hospital I happened to be born.
Okay.
But I lived my whole life in Quantico.
Okay. So that's where you're at now, and that's where you grew up.
In fact, I bought the house from my family that I lived.
Oh, sweet.
I'm living in my childhood. But yeah, I always laugh when people talk about New Jersey, because it's like, I think it's the best kept secret around. They can make fun of it all the while. They watch the Jersey Shore, or they land in Newark, and then they drive from Newark to Manhattan, and they think, oh my God, this New Jersey. And every state has that area that they're not. I mean, I lived it for almost 20 years in Los Angeles, and you can drive down parts of the 405 and oil refineries and things. Nobody puts that in the package of beautiful California when you see that.
Yeah.
It's like everybody has it. But I mean, for me, I've been fortunate to travel, really a lot of places around the world, and seen some of the most beautiful beaches. And I'll take the Jersey Shore any day of the week.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just an absolutely beautiful place to go to.
Just wish we didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I hate saying
it's very silly.
They're like, what? You have to what?
I know.
So
and it gets so expensive. We went to Jenkinson's Boardwalk, and my daughter wanted to go on the beach for a little bit. And we're like sitting there like, all right, is it really worth it? I think it was like $35 for the four of us. So like, is it really worth it for like the hour? So like, even when she wanted to leave, I'm like, we're going to stay a little bit longer to milk all of this. But no, Jersey is like to me, it's like, it's such this weird little brethren. I remember being in Cancun, Mexico, like when I was 21, and it was like everybody was partying, and it was like one section was like Ireland, another section was like England. It was like all these different sections, and it was so funny. Like me and my friends, it was like New Jersey was like one group, and then the rest was like USA. So it was weird how it's like this weird little thing. Because I think you're right, because we do get picked on by like SNL. I think was famous for it. early on,
Yeah.
making fun of New Jersey and bits. But so at what point growing up, when did acting become something that you thought of?
Pretty early on, my mother threw all of the kids in my family in a dance school when we were very young. I think we were, living vicariously through her. She was living vicariously through us, I should say, because I think she always wanted to be like a performer, and didn't get to do it. She came from Scotland, and they were very,
Oh,
extreme,
okay.
zero money, and so I think she was very much. Both of my parents. My father came from Italy, my mother from Scotland. They
How'd
were
they meet?
always. They met at a dance in New York City.
So they came over separately and then
Yeah,
connected
they
here?
met in New York City. My
Wow.
father always jokes about the fact that he said it was I met your mother on a flip of a coin because his buddies some wanted to go to the boxing matches at the Garden, and other guys wanted to go dancing. So they flipped a coin, and the coin was go to the dances, and that's where he met my mother. And then he
Oh my
always
God.
jokes that he lost the flip of the coin because he wanted to go to both.
That's amazing. That's how I met my wife. My buddies wanted to go to the city after going to the Hoboken St. Patty's Day parade. And I was like,
Right.
I really don't want to go. Then my one buddy was like, hey, you want to go to Atlantic City? It was like 2 a.m. And that's where I met my wife. We were like from same hometown. She was a year older than me. She graduated a year before me. And yeah, that's so funny how
Did you know her in high school though? Did you know who
sort
she
of,
was?
sort of.
Yeah, but not really part of your
She was
crowd
too
or anything.
cool for school. She was too cool for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I knew her siblings. Her sister was a year younger. Her brother was 2 years younger than me. So no, I knew her family, hung out at her house sometimes, but just never
Right.
met until we were like 24 or so. But yeah.
Very similar to my situation with my wife.
Oh,
Because
really?
well, my wife and I, our families like that. My mother put me in a dance school. Her and her twin sister were in that dance school. So like we knew who they were, and then the dance school turned into like this performance thing because the kids in my family all sang, so it turned into like this musical review kind of thing. So I just started very young, sort of performing. For me, it was just either I was performing or playing sports.
Yeah.
And my parents being European, they really only knew soccer. So we grew up with that. My father started the soccer program, which still thrives in this town
Oh, that's cool.
um, 50 years later. Um, so yeah, I started here doing it. Then I went off to college for it. I went to Ithaca, upstate New York. It's one of the acting programs in the country for it. Moved into Manhattan for 4 years, and then I got more interested in TV and film. Uh, and my wife and I had gotten engaged, and I said, "Look, I'm going to split during the engagement year and go to California." She's like, "What?"
Yeah.
Um, because I wanted to see if that's where where I wanted to live. Um, I said I would rather go out there and find out during that year that I hate it, and then we'll just start here in New Jersey. But then if it works out, so it worked out, and we got married, and we went to Los Angeles. We were in Los Angeles for 17, 18 years.
So that year, was that 95? Like 94, 95? Was
That
that
was
the year?
1990. We got married and moved in 90. I moved in 89, the fall of 89, and 90 we went there. So I was in there from starting in 90. We were married in 90, and we drove, packed up our stuff and pulled a trailer across the country.
Nice. That's fun.
And yeah, found an apartment in Hollywood, and it just started there. And then, it's funny. I think I talked to him because I also, besides being fortunate that I've been a working actor for, I don't know, what, over 30 years, I also teach and
cool.
coach a lot of name working actors. I work with them. And I tell my students all the time, it's like, my wife calls it the roller coaster. You don't know. If somebody told me that, I was going to go study in New York City for 4 years with one of the best acting teachers, Uta Hagen, on the planet, and then I was going to move to Los Angeles, and I wasn't going to get my first real job until 1994. The 86 graduate, 90. You're going to wait 8 years. 8 years you're going to wait, and then your career is going to start. Most people were like, "What?" You know, But you talk to a doctor who's doing residency or anything like that. Kids these days, they want it overnight.
Yeah.
They want to be their 15 minutes of fame, and there's a difference between the 15 minutes of fame and if you really want to, pursue this and really work at it. So it was, like I said, it was 8 years before I got my first gig, which I landed 2 jobs at the same time, which was crazy. I landed this movie called Bigfoot: The Unforgettable Encounter, which was a independent, shooting up in the Sierra National Forest. They had like a nickel to rub together for this production, and then I finished that after shooting for 4 weeks, and my first studio project was Free Willy 2.
Oh,
So
cool.
I went from a $200,000 project to getting flown like on a private seaplane out to the San Juan Islands to shoot whatever the cost of that thing was, $50 million film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially
And
using a robotic whale, I'm sure that it costs more, but maybe ethically, is that why they? I don't know why they.
it's pretty amazing. I have some incredible photos of that. But my wife at the time worked in the visual effects department, but they also
Really?
the visual effects.
Oh, that's
I was
cool.
only in that movie Free Willy 2 for maybe 2.5 weeks. She was on that film for like 4 months, living up in the San Juan Islands, which was amazing, right off the coast of Seattle. But not only was she doing on the visual effects team that did the visual effects, the guy who had won, he was an Academy Award winning visual effects guy. He also got them, if he did the visual effects, to let him be the second unit director, which a second unit director shoots a lot of the beauty shots, which was the whales.
Yeah.
And he sold it to them by saying, hey, look, if I'm the guy that's going to be doing all of the visual effects and kind of creating this thing for you, and we're using these, whales, these mechanical whales, he said, I want to be able to shoot the actual whales so I can match stuff.
Mhm.
So my was on the team that shot every single beauty shot you see in that movie. If you watch that movie, all of the background shots, the sunrises, all of those whales, actual whales jumping, all that stuff, that's all her team's work.
Wow. So she
yeah,
was
so that
doing this. So when you took that quote unquote sabbatical, like when you got engaged and go out there in like 90, like she was already working in special effects, or no? That's great.
she was in marketing, working for like doing like things for like Time magazine. It's completely different.
Wow.
And she dropped her career and said, okay, let's go. What's in Los Angeles? And when she went in Los Angeles, she landed this job, and she, started working with this guy and was, doing visual effects,
That's
which was kind of
rad.
crazy. Yeah, it was kind of nuts. So here we
Yeah.
were, we went from doing nothing to suddenly our lives changed in the spring of 1994. We had a going away party for her in, I think it was like maybe February, because she was gone to the San Juan Islands from February to June or something. And suddenly it was like, oh, this is what we dream. Be careful what you dream of. Because here we were now. Okay, shit, her career is going, and I'm starting to work, but we were separate.
Yeah.
It was a very exciting time, and shooting that thing was really, it was cool to shoot. I mean, we shot it. If you see that film, I played this character, Helmsman Kelly, which is the guy who ends up crashing the boat and causing what the whole movie's about. I try to be the good guy, telling the captain, this is dangerous, and if you watch the movie, I'm yelling, blah blah blah, and then crashing thing. But we actually got to go out. I mean, it's kind of bizarre. I went from shooting that one movie. I drove up to the Sierra National Forest, met a guy, a Jersey guy, connected with a guy, right? In 5 minutes, I connect with the Jersey guy. And to this day, he's one of my closest friends, the godfather of my kids. I'm the godfather to his kids. It's crazy. On that film, and, when you work on a film, they give you per diem, because if they can't feed you, they can't do that, they give you cash. And they say, because it's part of the union deal, that if you're eating and they're not going to feed you, then they got to give you money to go somewhere. So this production was so minimalistic that, like, we were fighting for our $20 to go get, like enough cash, and they didn't. you know, and there was a couple of name actors in it, two of them, and then two or three of them, and then the rest of us. A lot of people was their first thing, which was crazy. I look back on that now. A lot of them successful over the period, but that thing we were like begging for money, and then the experience. I come home from shooting that, like practically living in a stable, for like a month movie, and I come back, and literally 48 hours later, it was time for me to fly to go do that movie. Well, this is, you're a kid from New Jersey, and so like, okay, we'll send the car for you. A limo shows up, drives you to LAX. There's a person from Warner Brothers waiting for you. They escort you to to your flight. We took a flight from Los Angeles to Seattle, landed in Seattle, and there's another person waiting for you, and they took you over to a separate area where this walked you out onto the the tarmac, and there was a private mini plane.
Was it a prop plane?
Yeah, and it was going to fly you. It was under, you get on the thing with like 5 or 6 guys,
Yes.
and they're asking you how much you weigh, and they're like, "Don't lie." It's like, they cram you in this little plane, and they flew us over to the San Juan Islands, which are spectacularly beautiful. And we got there, and they're like, "Hey, Neal, blah blah blah. You're going to go." And my wife's already been working on the movie. They said, Pam sent the message over. She'll see you at lunch when they break for lunch. So so they said, "Oh, we're going to stop by and have you sign some contracts and get your per diem." So I'm thinking to myself, pretty well, that's kind of different from the other film. Like we were begging for the $20. Well, when I went to the per diem, for the whole time I was there, they had it like in an envelope. I thought it was in a mob film. There was this envelope that was like this thick, just with cash in it. They just were like, paid you up front for the whole time you were going to be there. And then they took us to lunch. And, the lunch at the other thing was, a ham and cheese sandwich. And now they have the thing. It was crazy. It's Warner Brothers, and there's iced seafood, lobster. Bonkers.
That's wild.
You're just thinking about the difference of the movies, of like how, different productions doing different things.
It's good to see those two parts of it. Like usually people might just see that first experience you had, like the Bigfoot one, for like, maybe a few years until they get their feet wet and they get that big production. But it's pretty wild that happened. So what happened in 90 that made you say, I think we can go out there? Because you said, obviously you tell your students like, hey, I didn't work until 94, but what was it in 90 that you're like, all right, I can do this?
I think in 90, that's a great question. The 90 was a sort of like settling in, but when I studied, like I said before, you can Google like greatest acting teachers, right? And they're going to give you a list of probably 10 of them, Stella Adler, you're going to hear
Strasberg.
Strasberg. You're going to hear these names come up, same ones. And I was very fortunate, like I said, to study with Uda in the city from 86 to 90. And when she had like 600-700 people around the world come every year for these 30 spots. And they always told everybody that, you got to wait a few years. But I was just like full of piss and vinegar. I was just like, I read her book because we studied the book in college. I'm like, what more do I need? I read the book. And I went and auditioned, but she picked me to be in the class. And so I studied there. When I left there, she said to check out this guy, Milton Gonzalez. Milton Gonzalez, if you do any research with him, he, one of the best acting teachers around. He's well known in the Los Angeles area. He directed the Zeus Story, which is a really, and actors would know the Zeus Story is a play, and a lot of actors do the Zeus Story. It's done in college. Everybody knows the Zeus Story. It's this 2-man piece. Everybody knows it. Well, when it was out of Carnegie Mellon, he directed that at like 26 years old on Broadway. And that started his career. He ended up directing on Broadway Goldie Hawn in good Lord, right on where she's blind. It's gonna come to me. It's a really famous movie. I can't think of it. I can't believe it. I can't. It's gonna come to me. But for anybody younger listening to this, Goldie Pawn is a terrific actress who's actually Kate Hudson's mom. That's the way they end up knowing it. Anyway, he directs her in this play on Broadway.
Oh, is it Butterflies Are Free?
Thank you. Butterflies Are Free. There you go.
Okay.
Nice work. Butterflies Are Free. He directs the play, and then he directs the film. And Eileen Heckett, who was a supporting actor, won Best Actress, won the Oscar that year for that performance.
Oh my God.
So obviously, he ends up, he directed everybody. Gene Hackman, Pacino, everybody and their mother wanted to work with Mel. And I went to his class. That was in, when I got out there in 90, and because my friend of mine was there already. And I built this community right away. And I knew that these people were all working. We had a lot of working actors in the class. So as soon as you start to see that, you see, people are there, they're working, they're talking about the business, they're actually in the business. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I just stayed there, and I kept working in class from 90 to 94. I mean, even after 94, I was still in the class. But I think that that's really what kept me there. The other thing that kept me there is we left all of our family behind. So we only had each other, my wife and I. She grew up down the street from me. In fact, she grew up down the street from me, and she has an identical twin. And the twin bought the house that they grew up in, and we now live in the house I grew up in.
Oh wow!
So we, I don't know, maybe tell you that story, but we were, the community. All of my friends that I was in acting school at Ithaca with, almost all of them moved to Los Angeles.
Really?
It was great because we had this group of like 7, 8 actors that came through school that I knew. That became like our family. Like my kids refer to my college friends as aunt and uncle. That was their family.
That's cool.
I had 3 kids.
Were they still working? Did they stick it out, like keep acting, like most of them?
Yes. Well, some have and some haven't. Some of them have turned on to doing other things, and they've been, successful if they were done. Some of them left it and have come back to it now at a late stage in life, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think that's what kept me going. I never really thought about that. Now that you say, I think it's the idea of being in that environment.
Yeah.
And, also seeing other people become successful. One of my friends did a movie called The Third Wheel. He wrote it and starred in it. And at the time, was very good friends with Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. All of those guys did the movie with us, which was crazy. So if you look at the list of actors in The Big Wheel, it was really kind of The Third Wheel. It was kind of nutty. So you start to see one of your friends have some success, and fortunately you're included in that success by, playing and doing parts in the movie and sort of running around with a certain crowd. So I really think that that's really, kept me sort of in the game.
Yeah. And you have to have that confidence because you're in the acting class, and like, it's like, a million people use the same phrase, being the hero of your own story. So if somebody else, you'd say you were like crap on somebody else's success, but you're like, I could do that. That could be me. Like watching somebody else do it. That's cool to get that sense of community. I've talked to a bunch of people. I don't know if it was like that with folks. That's cool to get people from the same school. I know Chicago. I don't know if like New York does it, but Chicago does the coolest thing. They put together whoever actors are from Chicago. Yeah. They do like a breakfast on like a Sunday, and they'll get actors to come in, because one of them was like, I'm thinking it's going to be like, oh, this guy but like, what's his name? Michael Madsen did it. And I interviewed an actress in the early 90s. She was out there. He would come in like once a month and like just talk to them and give tips. Did they do anything? Did you know any like Jersey or New York people that would do that?
I think, I don't know. There's a huge Jersey and
a ton,
and Jersey and New York community in LA, which is kind of crazy, really huge. Well, it made me think of something. One of my closest friends is Carlos Bernard. I don't know if you ever watched the show 24 back in the day.
Yeah.
So he was Tony Almeida in that show. He was the only guy. Tony Almeida was the only guy that the guys besides Kiefer, that made it from very first episode, 7 seasons or whatever it was, to the end. In fact, they tried to
great.
They killed him in season 4 or 5 or something like that, and the fans went berserk. And then you find out that he came back, that he hadn't died. But he is now, besides acts, directs a lot. So I've done like Dick Wolf shows where he's directed. So this goes back 30 years ago, meeting in an acting class, and him becoming part of that family that you have.
Yeah.
And then friends go on to do other things, and there's still, my agent just said to me the other day, because I'm auditioning, in fact, this week for something that he's directing. And my agent happened to say to me, he goes, boy, because he's really good to you. I said, meaning in the sense that, he thinks about me for parts and stuff like that. I said, I don't even think about it. It's like, and neither does he, because you basically supported each other for over 30 years in many different ways, that it's just, that's what you do. You're your group. It's like all you want to do is I do sadly see a lot of people get successful and they leave those people behind. And I always wonder what it is. Yeah. And I think some people are afraid that people would know where they come from or something, where it's like, I'm the opposite. I want the people around me who know how much you struggle and how difficult it is. And then they're seeing you have, success. And then it's,
I don't know. But I know what you mean. There's so many stories like that. Like, oh yeah, they got so big they don't talk to anybody anymore. It's like, I don't know, maybe they just didn't get along with those people to begin with, or they just their head got too big and they're like, I don't want to be around I don't want to remember my before life or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was having a pizza with one of my buddies who has nothing to do with this. He was as a lieutenant colonel and a retired lieutenant colonel in the military, and has been subsequently very successful in his life. And he was telling me about a couple of things. Then he stopped. He said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I feel like I'm bragging about all." I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No one is happier for you than me." I said, "He could buy and sell me 10 times over." I said, "But like if I'm doing a project," I said, "you call me up and you're excited for me. Oh, I saw you on TV." Or so it's like, I said, "It's just as exciting for me to see your financial success, or your family's success." I said, "If you're not rooting for your friends, who are you rooting for?"
Yeah, I know. And that's good karma, building other people up, and then hopefully it comes back your way. But no, that's cool that you had that sense of community, even though nothing happened right away. But were you auditioning like before 94 happened? Auditioning? Did you do any commercials?
I have done over 100 commercials. There was you can Google, we actually set the model. They won so many Clios for it. There's a group of actors that do these budget commercials. And you see one of the most famous ones. You can just Google it, budget commercial, electric wire or something like that. And you'll see it was wildly successful. A bunch of guys around a table, men and women around a table, coming up with ideas. Say, what if we blah, blah, blah. What if we put him in a jetpack, to get quicker to the car from the thing? And the jetpack goes off, hits the electric wires, the thing blows, gets fried. And then it cuts back to the people around the table. It's like, nah, let's just stick with, giving them good deals, And we shot like 13 of those, over a 4-year period. I think the first big commercial I ever did, I did a commercial for Heineken. It was just another very well-known commercial at the time because it played during every sporting event.
Yeah.
In the 90s. It was just 2 guys, me and a bartender. I'm sitting at a bar and I'm reading the paper and talking about how much these baseball players are paid. I said, could you imagine what Willie Mays would get paid today? And it's just this conversation. Yeah. And it played on every sporting event you could possibly want to see, which was kind of, and I could be doing Shakespeare in Central Park. My buddies that I grew up with here that I'm still friends with in Quanah, they could care less. But as soon as they saw me in a giant in a Heineken commercial on a Giants game, then I had success.
Then you had street cred, yeah.
Exactly. I had arrived when they saw me in a commercial for Heineken.
Enquanto você escuta seu podcast favorito, que tal dar uma olhada nos looks da Riachuelo para as festas de fim de ano? Brilhos, transparências, vestidos, conjuntos, temos tudo para todos os eventos. Aqui, toda festa começa com look.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's funny, like commercials are good then. Like
oh
pay
my
wise.
God.
I'm not saying they're not now, but I talked to, Peter Jason, you know that name?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. So I talked to him, and it's funny in his career, what like a phenomenal character actor in so
Right.
much. Go-to guy for like he was in a lot of Carpenter, Walter Hill, and
Right.
so there was a stretch of his IMDb that was like a little light, and he started talking about these stories. Like he moved to Jersey. He was
Uh-huh.
living in Secaucus for 4 years because he was doing a ton of commercials
Yeah.
I think in the late 70s. He was
Yeah.
living here. And he's like, I would just go to the Manhattan or I'd go to, wherever. And he's like, it was so good. The money was so great. He goes,
The
I
money
was like
was,
passing up roles
yeah.
for
You
a
have,
commercial.
the money in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s maybe and the reason why that is you have to think about it. If you did a national commercial, there was only at a certain point, I mean, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, the cable thing really hadn't exploded.
Yeah.
And the money that they had, the deals that they had set within the union, there was a certain contract, and these companies had the money. Now it's just so many different ways and outlets. It's been watered down a lot. Unless
Yeah.
you hit one of those. I did one maybe 2 or 3 years ago for Trulicity, which is a drug for
Yeah.
diabetes.
Yeah.
I played this photographer, and unless you land something like that,
Well, you're the
you know,
photographer and then the voiceover saying all the negative side effects. Like,
so yeah, you see me traveling all around. We shot all around New Jersey and upstate New York. Yeah, just do Google Trulicity photographer.
cool.
I mean, any of that's
What were
YouTube.
some of the did you get flown to any cool locations where you were doing the commercials?
I did. I flew. I did. Where would I fly to? Oh, I'll tell you one funny story. I was doing a commercial. This is back in the day when they have money, so they have to fly you first class. And I was doing a movie doing a commercial in Nashville, and it was around Thanksgiving. And so they're going to fly me to Nashville, but they said they would have me back, the night before Thanksgiving to LA. So I said to them, listen, instead of paying for one first class ticket, will you pay for two coach tickets? But I want the ticket to go to Nashville, then I want it to go to New Jersey, and then after Thanksgiving, I want it to fly back to Los Angeles. They're like, sure. So my wife and I got to go to Nashville for a few days, shoot a commercial, fly home for Thanksgiving. They paid everything, and then they flew us back.
Nice.
I've been fortunate, commercial wise, up and down the coast of California, Vegas. I've done various things. I think in the film world, I did a film called Contact.
Yeah.
Which if you watch
That was
the
early
movie,
on too for you.
yeah, that was right after that. And if you see me in that film, I don't say a word. I'm in every single scene that Jimmy Woods is in. I play it's his aide, which is his right hand guy. He's like the head of the NSA. But that was really cool because we went out to New Mexico to the Large Array, which if you Google that, you'll see those gigantic, sound telescopes, or what are
Yeah.
gigantic. And if you see a picture of it, you're like, well, that's kind of cool. When you go there and see that, you don't realize that these things are how large they actually are. It's like 10 stories high. And but that was cool because I got to go there. And then the opening of the scene that we're in there, we had to fly in a military Black Hawk. So it was myself and Jimmy Woods and Tom Skerritt flying in this.
Oh my God.
It was crazy
Shit.
to do that. And then it's shot in Washington, D.C. So funny story. I was playing Jimmy Woods' assistant in the film. So that was the head of the NSA. So I'm like, well, who is the head of the NSA's? Like, what exactly is his job? I'm into trying to figure out my character and that kind of thing, do research. So I actually called the White House on my own, and I asked for the NSA director, which of course they're not going to put the NSA director on the phone for me. They were just like, is this? And I said, I'm actually not looking for him. I'm looking for his assistant. So they connect me with the assistant. The assistant takes the call. It's a young guy. And he said, how can I help you? So I tell him my name, and I'm shooting this movie, and we're coming to, and the guy gets all excited. I said, I'm playing you. I said, well, I'm your brain. I said, is there a time? And the guy gives me his home number, and I call him at home that night, and we're on the phone for like a couple of hours. He's just talking about like what he does day to day and how he positions himself. And I wanted to ask him questions like, so if you're walking next to the NSA director and you're meeting a dignitary or you're meeting the president, which just happens in the movie, it's like, what is your behavior? What do you do? And he says, I know exactly where I'm supposed to be standing. He knows over my right shoulder, I'm this far back. If I have information, I'm whispering in his ear, or if I have to write it down, I'm right. So it gave me stuff to kind of use. And when we were done with the conversation, he said, hey, when you're in town, he goes, do you want to come to the White House? I was like, yeah. I said, that'd be great. I said, well, can I bring my family? He goes, oh, you can bring whoever you want. He goes, just do me a favor, send a list, because they're going to have to check the security background on every single one of them. This is pre 9/11, so it was a lot more. But I called my buddies up in New Jersey. I was like, who wants to go to the White House? So a bunch of them met us in there. My mother came up, brought my mother. It was the same. So it was about 10 of us. We were supposed to get a tour of the White House for like an hour. And he set us up. We met this Secret Service agent that was going to take us. And he was a young guy. He, loved movies, this, that. We ended up being in the White House for over 2 hours. And we were, in the Oval Office. They took us down. There's a bowling alley there. At the time, Clinton had built this track in the back for running. And we have of my son, who at the time was 18 months old, of him running, in the back of the White House on this track. And when we went to the movie theater, you weren't allowed to take pictures inside or anything. So we go into the movie theater. It's a small theater. And he locks the door and he says, okay, who's got cameras? Break those cameras out. He's like, Mrs. Matarazzo, come sit over. This is the president's chair. Whoa. It was crazy. So we shot all this stuff. We have all this fun, crazy video in the White House. But it's bizarre access to certain things. So that was kind of a cool travel story that I got to do.
That's cool that you reached out and did that. Did you do that for any other roles that you remember that you were like?
Pretty much everything that which is the same thing I teach, was doing I was very fortunate that I did a recurring role in a series called Brooklyn South. That came right after all this. This is when the work started to come in.
I said Detective Hayes.
Yeah. So that was a recurring role. Now that show was a spin-off from NYPD Blue.
Oh, okay.
Stephen Bochco, who's probably one of the most famous television producer directors in the history of TV, Bochco Productions, Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blue. I mean, Bochco did everything. I played this detective. So it's funny because I had never played any kind of cop part before. And here I get this part. And subsequently in my career now, I can't tell you 30 or 40 characters I played as a detective, FBI, the warden of a prison. It's like all this sort of military-esque kind of thing. And Bochco was the first one that put me in a project. But when I was going to do that, I went to the LAPD and I asked them if I could do a ride-along. So that was kind of cool because you show up in the morning and they had this young team of, I think about this now, it's very funny. I just saw this thing somebody posted this thing on Instagram or something, and it said, remember when you watched these shows and you thought they were older and
I know, the Cheers is the worst one.
And they were all 30s, you know what I'm saying?
I can't believe that the guy, who was it? It was only like 30 something. And
Sam Malone.
Really... was it Ted Danson? Maybe?
Danson. I worked with Ted. I worked with him on and him and Glenn Close. He was really nice. On Damages.
I think Golden Girls is the bad one too. Golden Girls is bad because they were in their late 40s, which is wild. Wild. Yeah.
Well, when I do that show, I think back now because I am the age thing. It's like I'm 62 now. I was in my early 30s, playing that, and I went and watched these younger than me. I'm in my 30s. They were like maybe in their mid 20s. They had a team of we were going to go out on drug busts in the street. So we went, and I went through the whole thing. In the morning, they had a thing where they had like, they picked the color that they were all wearing. They had the signs that they were going to use for the day, and tipping a hat, doing certain things. So it's kind of cool. Didn't last long. They were, they had their thing each day. They had their meeting. I just stood there, and they all got their assignment. Then I'm in the back of this car, and they said, "Look, here's the thing. You're going to wear your seatbelt. There's going to be a go sign. We're going to be flying in this car towards someone's going to be buying drugs. A cop's going to be buying drugs. And then the minute you buy the drugs and the guy tips the hat or whatever his move was on that thing, that's the signal for us to go in. We are going to be moving very fast in the vehicle. You keep your seatbelt on and you stay in the car till we call you out." So I was like, all right. I had no idea what I was doing. But this guy's, see, the very first one is a guy against the cement, like a brick wall. He's buying drugs, and there goes this day to say, got the signal. And like, I'm in the middle of the back of the car watching this shit, and the car takes off from 0 to 60. It's like going right to this wall. Guy jams on the brakes. They jump out of the car, and now I think I'm going to be there a while till they arrest the guy. And they grab the guy, and they look in the car. They're like, "Neal, come on." And like, it's in the middle of the other people running, scattering. They're taking this guy down. So you got to, see it. And they did about, God, I was there all day with them. We must have done that 10, 15 times, just breaking down people selling drugs in the streets of Los Angeles. So that was, so that, research, you're just doing research and trying to, whatever it is, people have different sort of whatever people want to call it, method acting, this, that. It's just doing your due diligence. I mean, you get a part playing an airport, a pilot. It would be best for you to maybe have a conversation with a pilot. I mean, why not, right?
Yeah. No, it's only going to help you. Like, I've talked to some people that don't do it, but it's not like they're like, "Oh, I'm too big for it." They just look at it in a different way. Like, I talked with the late Lenny Van Dolen, and he was on Twin Peaks, and he played a recluse, and he talked to, he's like, I don't know if they're going to answer the phone, but he like reached out and got in touch with somebody and learned like what they do, like why they don't want to leave their house, what are some things they have around the house. So he was able to bring that to that role. But I love when people get super into the characters. Like when I watched the Man on the Moon documentary with Jim Carrey, when he's Tony Clifton, and he's like, it's
crazy.
It's crazy. I get why it could be like troublesome for other people on set, because he's like hurling like insults and he's being like kind of a prick. But at the same time, I think some people, like even the hairstylists, were like laughing at him because they knew what it was. But so there's like two sides to it. But that's cool that you reached out to do that, and look what happened from it. Just for you to reach out, talk to a guy that probably never gets asked about what his job is.
Exactly.
And he was so excited, and he gave you like the VIP treatment.
Right. But it's like, I'll teach that with my actors too. It's like, if you have a character, why not? I always use the phrase, take the character out. Yeah. So if you go out with the character, just take a walk, go to a 7-Eleven, buy something as the character, just try to embody it. I'm not saying if you're a fire eater to go to the 7-Eleven fire in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Reactions of what people do. I in that acting class that I was talking about, it was so detail oriented, and it's the same people that I have my own studio in my house that I teach privately, and then I teach one day a week in the city for the same guy that I've studied with. He's long since passed away, but the New York studio I run in the city here.
Oh, that's cool. Where is it in the city?
It's on 36th Street between 8th and 9th.
Oh, sweet. My office is on 35th.
Well, if you ever want to come on a Tuesday night and watch acting class for 3 hours, you let me know.
Oh, that'd be rad. I go to that. That's the day I have to go in the cities on Tuesdays. I'll let you know. That's cool.
If you want to come in one night, you just send me a text the day before and just say, "Hey, how does tonight look?" We have auditors, not every Tuesday, but fair amount. You can come sit back and watch it. But
no, that'd be rad. Isn't it funny? Like whenever you're not funny, but when you ever hear people talk about, because you just get off at Penn Station, right? Or do you take a different way in?
I drive, but I did.
That's true. Yeah.
I have 6 or 7 students from New Jersey that come. They come, literally, they get off at Penn Station. They walk the 2 blocks over.
That's what's convenient about like where I work. Like when people are like, "Oh, the crime rates," like my wife hates when I go into the city, but I only have to do like 4 times a year. But it's like as soon as like you hear all these stories, and I'm like, it's not that bad. I'm like, because I only have to walk 2 blocks. It's not as scary as it used to be. Because I remember being in the early '90s, it was like really dicey. Like going there as a kid.
I lived there, like I said, 86 to 90.
Oh,
and that was, dangerous time. And then that started to clean up. And like some of my friends, they look at Times Square now and they're like, it's a circus, with like with lights and everything. It's just like, it's not gritty, they want it to be that gritty 70s. I'm like, please. I said, you can walk around at 3:00 in the morning now at Times Square and there's no danger. There's no aiming. It's all lit up and nice. You can walk from Times Square straight down 42nd Street to Port Authority and not worry about anything. When I was a kid, that was just all peep shows and bars, the whole thing. That's what it was. I mean, the different thing. But what I was saying about the thing is, like, I was doing a piece in that acting class. I was working on the character from the movie Serpico that Pacino did.
Yeah.
And he did it, part of that. It's like in the film and everything, he's now gone and grown a beard and this whole wig thing and this, period thing. And there was a guy from Paramount that happened to be in the class who was an actor, but his specialty was makeup. That's what he did. He worked on all films. This guy prepared me like that, did that for me for the night that I was going to do it. But I asked him the week before, I said, I've been rehearsing the thing with my partner. I said, I want to really sort of feel what it's like. And he, put me in the outfit. I had went out in the stores and found like this poncho from the 70s. And if you see the movie, you'll see what it's like. And I really wanted to work on that sort of undercover cop kind of thing and really kind of play with it. So he did it. I worked the scene and then everybody left. And now I'm still in the. So at the end of my block, there was a pizza place. The guy's name was Al, that ran this pizza joint. And I wanted to see if, doing a voice, it's like really, I wanted to see if I could go up, order pizza, sit there and eat it. And if he ever would say, Neal, what the fuck are you doing? Where I'm on your thing.
You're good.
And so I walked up, I went into there, I ordered just as I usually would do, ordered a couple of slices and a Coke, and I sat at the thing and, didn't say much. He talked a little bit, because he was a chatty guy, and I just think he thought that I was like some sort of vagrant who had money to buy his pizza because that's what I look like. And I went and ate it and left. Then a couple of days later, I went back and I walked in and it's like, Neal, hey, how's it going? Never said anything about for me. Wow. So the win for me was being able to see if you could take the character out and really kind of live it. I mean, there's all different extremes. We've heard, Daniel Day-Lewis is, plays Lincoln and he's Lincoln from the minute he wakes up till he goes to bed. That's his thing. I'm not.
Yeah, it's whatever works for you. Whatever gets you to put your best foot forward on a project,
It's exactly. It's whatever gets you to where you need to be. And same thing that I teach, but you got to put the work in. God is in the detail. That's that's the difference, I think, really. There's nothing worse than seeing someone playing something and that it doesn't really look like a mechanic.
Yeah.
He's putting, that wrench in the wrong place.
My God. The worst, I think, is I interviewed an actress that she went to nursing school. And so she was a nurse before she got into acting. And she talked about like all of these shows. She said even when she auditioned for, like, the dialogue was like not what a nurse would say. The way, like, she even told them like, oh yeah, in last season, I forgot what show it was on, but she was like, in last season, you had the nurse do this, but nurses don't do that and all that. But no, so all those things definitely work their way in. So Neal, so you're working at this point. You're moving along. It's the late '90s. What would you say is the first time? I'm sure Free Willy too, when you saw that and saw yourself in that movie, that was probably like a whoa moment. But what was another role that you could think of? Because obviously you were in it. Your wife was working in the industry. So this is something you're going to, this was your life because you love it. But what was a role or a series that you worked on, you're like, that's good work. Like seeing yourself and giving yourself like
I
kudos.
think that the look, I did Free Willy 2, and I flew home. There was on Route 46 up here. There was a movie theater, and they were playing it. So like, I don't know, 40 or 50 of my family members. We had like a
That's
big
awesome.
outing. Everybody went. I'm in the first third of the film, and then the movie's over. They're like, "Do you come back anymore?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
So it was exciting to do that. I think the Botchko thing, because I was recurring on it, and now you start to see every few episodes that the character comes back, and that show should have gone further. Botchko wanted that show, it didn't get picked up the following year, which was disappointing. So I think that I knew that. I think I'm like, really, you think you can do something. Like I just said earlier, it's like I was a kid watching television saying, I could do that. I think I could do that.
Yeah.
And then when you're actually doing it and you start to understand how sort of the machinations of going to a set and how it works, and understanding the camera and understanding what you're doing, and not just being an act. Now it becomes like a lifestyle. Like when you're trying to figure it out, I think all of those shows in the 90s after that, I can remember a lot of them that I did. Each one, was a little more of a stepping stone. But they're all, I just think they're all part of that. It's like you watch, you think, I have to say, what popped into my head when you said that was, I did a couple of seasons ago, I did Godfather of Harlem with Forrest Whitaker. Which is
Nice.
a great series. And I got to work with Giancarlo Esposito, if you know, from Breaking Bad, and Vincent D'Onofrio, and of course Forrest. I mean, these are three heavy hitters, and the scenes weren't just like, if you go watch the work, the episode was sort of my episode. They have there's always like an A storyline and a B storyline. Well, I was the A storyline. With the storyline, of course, was about racism and how they're brutalizing these young black kids. And I was the racist cop. So I was the face of the bad guys. And so I had to act with every one of them and confront each one of them, and, scenes with all of them. And I think when you have to, prepare one day to work with Forrest, and then you go home and you got, tomorrow I got this, and then the next day I got that.
Yeah.
And you're, you're the guy. That's when you start to realize that the pressure's on. I always tell a story about one of my friends. I did that Heineken commercial I told you about. I came home at Christmas, and one of my buddies, which we're all still very close, the rest of them were egging him on. They're like, "Yeah, do it." We're all standing in my kitchen, right? The kitchen right here in this house. And they're like, "Go, show him, do it." And I'm like, and they're like, "What are you?" I didn't know what they were talking about. I was home for Christmas. It's like, he does an impersonation of you in the commercial. And and he thinks it's really easy, and he can't believe the amount of money that you're making from doing it. Well, like they were like, busting on me because they're one's a doctor, one's a lawyer, one's the guy who's doing construction. They're all different varieties of plumber. I got it all. And they're all standing around and they're getting him to do it. And I said, "Well, go ahead, do it." I said, "Listen, I'll play the other part for you. You play me." So he goes, and I say the first starting line for the guy, and he goes, and he goes to say my first line, and he stumbles on it a little bit. And they're all, of course, eating it up and laughing. And I'm like, no, come on, stop. Let him do it. So I do it again. I'm like, already, and rolling, and action. And I say, and he screws up again. And I gave him like 3 or 4 shots at it, and we get halfway in the funnel. And then he stopped at one point. He said, "All right, maybe it's not as easy as I thought." I said, "Oh, not as easy as you thought?" I said, "Try doing that." And it's a $250,000 day for them. I said, and the camera starts to roll. I said, and there's 40 people standing around you, and you're the guy. You want to pressure? That's pressure. Well, I think that, recently when I went and did that show with those guys, and not that there's any kind of attitude, like I don't bow down to the fact that Forrest Whitaker is a phenomenal Academy Award winning actor. Last King of Scotland, when you see him in that performance, God, I mean, it's just crazy. That when you've watched him your whole life growing up, in movie after movie after movie, and you get to work with him. There is a reverence when you say hello, hey, Forrest, really great to meet you. Hey, Neil, thanks for coming on to our show, blah, 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 blah. But after that, you got to drop it. It's all done. I'm all done with that. And then you go to work, and then you finish and you feel good about it, and then it comes out and you watch it and you're like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. There's a real solid, good feeling about that as an actor. Like you feel like, you can piss with the big dogs.
Yeah.
It's just that some people ask me, what's it like? You're like a character actor. You've been doing a long time doing this. I said, it's kind of like being the pinch hitter for the Yankees. You've made it to the show.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by everybody. You see Jeter to your left or whoever the guy is to your right. You're there every day on the biggest stage, but you don't get to play every day. That you're a pinch hitter, and you go in there and you do a great job, and they're thrilled. And then you say to them, "I'm available tomorrow," and they're like, "But we don't need you tomorrow."
No, you're right. Like Luis Soho, would the Yankees have won every World Series because he had big hits, came up in big spots. You never know.
Absolutely.
No, you're right. I think that's the coolest thing about movie making. Like I helped, like I talked to you on the phone, I helped Larry Hankin put together his memoirs, and like, it's so funny. So many of these little parts that he has and all these different things. Same with yourself. It's like, all right, what if that guy wasn't there that nailed that line like you were able to show your buddy in the kitchen? Like, if that doesn't work, maybe the actor you're in the scene with, it doesn't work for him if it's on like take 20, take 25. So I think that's what's so cool about filmmaking, TV film. Like, it's such a team effort. It's insane. Like how much goes into one scene. Like you don't even think about it until you actually maybe watch behind the scenes or talk to folks. And like, just from like the last 5.5 years, I knew how movies were put together, but it's really on a whole nother level now. Like thinking about even watching a scene and you see the cut and you see like looking out the window, it's like they probably shot this out the window scene, like looking out where you don't see any actors. They could have done that like 2 weeks after they actually did that scene. So it's cool how they put everything together.
Yeah. For my oldest, I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. The 2 older ones are in the entertainment business, but not in front of the camera, behind it.
Oh, cool.
One wants to write and produce from the inside, meaning, work at a studio, work, TV show. And the other one is nuts and bolts. Like he's an assistant director now. He's working his way up as a PA. But I think the coolest thing for me was he is like a key PA now on some major television shows. Like he did Your Honor with Bryan Cranston, which I got to work with Bryan on Brooklyn South.
Wait, Bryan was on Brooklyn South?
Yeah, watch that.
So was that just before Malcolm in the Middle, right?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, if you read his book, he talks about his experience. I was shocked by what happened to him on that show. So long story short, they had trouble on the show because the main writer on that show, besides Bochco, and I'm not speaking out of school because he wrote it in his hold. They did a biography. Yeah. He had a big drug and alcohol problem. So he was doing 2 shows at the same time, NYPD and Brooklyn South at the same time. And he literally was like writing, like on the day you were getting stuff. Like I had a situation where he was writing and handed it to me. He said, "Try this." I was like, "What?" And Bryan came into the show, and Bryan was doing I think he did like 3 or 4, you can see it, the 3 or 4 episode arc. And I was talking to him one day, and he came to me and he's like, "How do you do the show?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "The guy's giving you the stuff and blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, what the hell do I know? I'd been on a couple of movies in this show.
Yeah.
Was this unusual? And he said at the time, I can't work like this. He said, "I'm going to give him notice today that to write me out of the next show. This is going to be my last episode." Wait. He said, "It's nice working with you." I said, "Yeah, you freaking." So I'm thinking to myself, who does this guy think he is?
Yeah.
That's going to quit a Bochco show. And if you read Bryan's book that came out a couple of years ago, he has a whole chapter about his experience on this thing. and how he couldn't work this way, which I think was a big reason why Jimmy Smits, who was on that show, they killed his character. Jimmy talks about it later too. He couldn't work in that way either.
Oh, so they were doing that on both shows? They were writing day
had
after
a problem
both.
with it, and Jimmy talks about the fact that he wanted out of NYPD Blue, which is they killed him off on that. Actually, his wife was my partner on the show that I do, Brooklyn South.
His real life wife or wife?
And he's been married, Wanda De Jesus.
Oh, okay.
We've been together 40 years, and in the first episode that I did, we played partners. But anyway, Bryan, and I thought to myself, who the frick does this guy think he is? He's a show. And of course, subsequently, like a year and a half later, not a year, he gets Malcolm in the Middle. And the craziest thing was about 3 years after that, my buddy that I mentioned earlier, Carlos Bernard, they have this celebrity Le Mans racetrack every year in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
They rock, real race cars. They drive them, and it's a big sort of competition. And all celebrities get. So my buddy gets picked to do it, and so we go down there. And lo and behold, the kid who was on Malcolm in the Middle, the younger kid, was getting
Frankie
drive.
Muniz?
Yes, Frankie Muniz. I had pictures.
Because
Of my
now he's
kids.
a driver.
Yeah. So, and I have a shot with my kids in my house here. It's Frankie Muniz and the two of them standing in front of the car with him in the red outfit that they all got. So Bryan's there, and he barely, it's like barely remember because we worked a little bit together. I reminded him. I said, Bryan, and I'm there with Carlos because the first night you're standing next to your buddy who's a celebrity on a TV show. The other one, Fred, because you're there, you're adjacent to the celebrity, and he walks up and we're all standing there taking pictures and stuff. I said, Bryan, I said, we met before. I said, we did Brooklyn. He said, oh, Neal, hey. And I said, I have to tell you a story. I said, in my mind, all I could think the whole time when you quit that show was, what the frick are you doing? And he started laughing. He goes, I couldn't work that way. He said, but as you can see, it worked out because he ended up doing Malcolm in the Middle. And then, of course, from that, the rest is history. But he was a great guy. Great guy.
He's great. Your Honor's a great show. I thought it was hard for them to do a season 2.
Yeah.
It was still good, but that's first season. He just is such a, I don't know. I just think he's a great actor, and I think he's just a great dude in the interviews. And his relationship with Aaron Paul is
how
something
he's
that
sort of under the wing, and kind of like other guys could have, just say, hey, you go to your trailer, I'll go to mine. Best of luck. I'll see you. But he didn't do that. Which just reminded me that the reason why sometimes I tell the story and I get lost. How the hell did I get to this story? I got to backtrack it. But the reason why I was even saying this was I said my son worked on that show.
Oh, yeah.
And he worked on that show. He worked Star Trek. He just finished doing Freaky Friday with Lindsay
sweet.
Lohan. The Freaky Friday or whatever they're making that thing.
Yeah.
But he worked. And he said to me, he came home, this is after years of, being in that position and working with these things. He came home and he said to me one time, he's got to tell you something that I've learned. I said, what's that? He goes, your job, the guest star, is the hardest job in the business.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, I appreciate you saying that. He said, I never really understood it till now. You realize that you're on a show and we're all a family. And like, you're the guest, you come on and you don't know anybody. You're just, sort of like an island by yourself. We can all be nice, like, hey, welcome, which some shows are, some shows aren't. He said, but really, it's like you got to come in and you have to deliver. You have to, I joke about Carlos with that, even with 24. I stumbled one day doing dialogue on that show with him, and I was like starting to get flop sweat. And he's like, just chill. I said, listen. I said, you're the star of the show. You screw up, they're all like, oh, Carlos. All right, let's go again. It's like I screw up. It's like, dude, what's going on? You know what I mean? It's just that it's just weighted that way. So it's you're pinch hitting, Yeah, no,
it's hard. No, it's definitely hard because I've heard stories on both ends like, oh, they don't really talk to the principal, doesn't really talk to the guest star. So that can be obviously really awkward if there's like no conversation. It's like, hey, do you want to run through these lines? Like, no. It's really awkward when you're on there. So no, I understand both of it. But yeah. So Neal, this has been a lot of fun. Here are 2 questions I always love to ask people. With actors, I always, for some reason, because we talked about so much of the different roles that you had. So first, when you were on even like the Bigfoot movie and Free Willy 2, did you ever keep mementos from those? Like, did you know in the time, like, hey, this is my first thing. I'm gonna keep something.
Yeah, everything that I do, I try to get something. So the coat that I wore in Bigfoot, I got to keep the coat.
Cool.
Free Willy too. I have memorabilia, but it's more of like they gave us a wrap gift of like this big green bag with the symbol of the Free Willy 2 on it.
Oh, that's cool.
In my studio, the only poster I have of any movie or anything in my studio, like I have all kind of memorabilia around, but the only poster I have is that in my holster, is the very first movie I ever did.
Yeah, that's cool.
That film. Every time I play a cop, like I'll take maybe like the badge or this. I did a soap opera once. I was Detective Mario Edmonds on the Young
I
and the
saw,
Restless.
What was that
was
like?
on the
Was that a wake up
That's
call? Like the way it's
the way they
filmed?
shoot. That's
know.
not. That is so hard.
Yeah.
You got to think about. What I stole from them is that they gave me Detective Mario Edmonds cards to give out like in scenes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
My friends all thought they're the girls, especially the wives, so it was great. So I was giving all of them a Detective Mario Edmonds card. No, just think about this. When you shoot I was shooting the soap opera and I was shooting Brooklyn South at the same time. I was
wow.
and I got to experience two things at the same time. A shooting script for a TV show, they shoot it in 8 days. So it's like 40 pages, 50 pages, 60 pages, whatever it is. It's an 8-day period, 8 shooting days. Soap operas shoot 40 pages a day, every day. They shoot a whole thing that you're doing over there in a week. They're doing it in a day. So it's so fast, and you've
like
got to
boot
remember.
camp. It's like obviously like nothing because those shows have been on for so long. So it's not like anybody here. It's not like you or I could be like, hey, we're gonna write the next soap show that's gonna be on for 50 years. They can bring back dead characters every 20 years. But it's like I feel like so many people, like even in people in horror, like had like their few years stints on these shows, but it's it's like volume. It's like, all right, let's get it done.
It's so fast, and it's so, and it's hard because I would come home at night and have my wife up memorizing things with me. You'd work all day, you'd get home, you'd eat something, and then you were trying to memorize all night for the next day. That was, I would not want that on a regular. It was just.
I think they did that too because they like their summers off. They would do they would bang it all out so they could almost be like, it was almost semesters. They go for a semester working, have some time off. And so that's cool that you kept some things. I always ask people, and you never know, like, this is going to be that first moment because nobody thinks about, to keep things. Like nowadays, it's easy. You snap a photo. There's like some kind of memory because just by accident, you might take a photo of something. But
keep all my. I keep all my.
Okay, cool.
Throw them. Like I have all those movie scripts, things with fun. I never one for pictures, but I I feel like I got to work with Michael Keaton and Andy Garcia, and
that's cool.
Michael was great. So I kept certain scripts. I know certain scenes that I loved. I kept them. What was the other thing you were going to say?
Oh no, but that's cool. You kept the scripts because what's cool about having those, like your notes. Like I talked to Stuart Penkin and I asked him if he kept anything, and he said, "Yeah, I keep them. I keep things." And I go, "What?" And he was looking off camera. I'm like, "What are you looking at?" And he's like, "There's a closet. If you open that door, it's a pile of scripts." And he says, "I'm gonna give those scripts to the kid I don't like." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" So he's like, "I would just keep them, throw them in the closet."
Yeah. It's kind of weird too. Like now we don't need it with streaming, but like to go to a store, like I don't go over there and like that. It's a decoration, but there's like 10 or 15, I mean, my kids like throw these in the garbage,
Yeah.
Can you see Bigfoot?
That's the VHS. That's cool. Where'd you find that, or did you have that since then?
I had it since then, like all of this,
That's right.
all of this show, but now they're in, it's like so now it's a decoration in my studio.
Yeah.
You won't even play these anymore. You know what I mean?
I know.
But to go to back in the day to to go to a store and walk in and buy a movie that you're in. You thought, who thought as a kid that someday you'd be buying, a movie that you're in?
I know.
Now,
And it's funny how much movies were back then. Like that
Right.
Bigfoot movie probably cost you like $20, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
Like now it's like, all right, I can pay $20 and get like, you can watch as many movies you want in a month. But and then Neil, another last question. So obviously you said like you played like a cop, detective, military a bunch. Is there a role, if you could write your own role to do tomorrow, is there a particular type of character that you'd want to play?
Yeah, I think that, look, I've been fortunate. Like I said, I've done commercials. I do a lot of voiceover work.
Oh, cool.
The soap opera world, television, film. For me, I mean, you're wishing for that one thing, so you can give your Academy speech.
Yeah.
Like every actor prepares in the mirror. No, I think it's changed over time. But I think now, after playing, I would love to do a series. That's really what I'd like to do, because I think series work now is really where characters, you really start to delve in, and you can expand the character over time. Even in the film world now, unless you're working with, some of the Scorsese, these guys, you see films, they're 90 minutes long, and the characters, it's so truncated and it just moves. Nobody wants to even watch. I just think the beauty of all of this stuff, like The Bear and all of these things that are out, you get to see these characters develop over time. So for me, if it could be a, pop show, like The Shield or The Wire, or, something there where I was playing this cop or detective, that, you see both lives, you see the good and the bad in the dude. That is sort of where my fingers crossed for my swan song, where they're going to hire the old 60-year-old gray-haired guy and say, let that prick do it.
You could be the grizzled, the usual about to retire guy, like in Falling Down with Robert Duvall. He's getting ready to to retire.
It's weird that you say that movie. I just watched that.
I love that movie.
Oh my God, so good.
I watched that way too much as a kid. Like for my age, I think, again, every generation, but like I was born in '86, so like when I was a kid, it was like that's when you're going to the video store to rent things. We had all the illegal channels from the illegal black box, and like so we were watching Cinemax, Showtime, HBO, and like even though I was playing sports all the time, like year round, I was always watching movies, and I was watching like Falling Down at like 9 years old, 10 years old. I couldn't imagine my daughter's gonna be 6 on Christmas. Like I remember watching Nightmare on Elm Street that young, because my neighbors were like 4 years older, so they were watching it. But it's like I couldn't imagine that stuff.
Well, it's like I can't tell you the people that I've come across, the Tarantino movies, that they're watching those things at like 9, 8, and they started watching it. Like, what the heck? It's just like crazy.
Natural Born Killers. I remember just being like sick to my stomach when they was in that first scene not first scene, but when they kill who's the actor too? It's not Rodney Dangerfield. Who's the guy that is it? Rodney? It was like an older actor that gets killed.
Rodney Dangerfield.
It's not Marshall. Was it Gary Marshall? Somebody's like in that. Somebody's in it that isn't like a familiar face that you would think being a scene. And I think they're like drowning in the fish tank or like something really gross. And I'm like, what am I like? But I think that's why I love film. Like during COVID, like people were giving out like VHS tapes. So when like, I think there's Free Willy. I think I might have Free Willy 2 somewhere, but my buddy picked up like a whole crate of laser discs when he was living in upstate New York. Somebody was giving away, but it's just cool. It's like tangible. Like I wouldn't buy like Blu-rays and stuff nowadays because again, like just the cost of it. It's like, well, yeah, what's the point? Exactly. People could say like, oh, digital, they can take it away forever. It's like, I just won't watch it then,
There's some more to watch.
Yeah, there's so much more to watch. I'm still watching stuff in the 80s and 90s that I never saw, like posters and like I see online that I'm like, how did I never see this movie? And then I'll watch that instead of watching something that just came out last week.
Right. There's also so many classics that people don't see, and then you have to watch it and you're like, wow. I just like I said, I have all these things. It's like, what are they for now? You know what I mean? Because you'll just go
Yeah.
watch some. Unless you like the commentary, sometimes you listen to them for the the commentary.
Yeah, I do miss that. I do miss that. I miss gag reels and bloopers, and especially on like the Will Ferrell, like the Adam McKay movies. They used to have like they used to put it together like not bloopers, but scenes they just cut. They were just improv scenes after the initial line. So then that's pretty cool. But Neal, it's been awesome, man.
It's been great.
When this comes out, I'll clean this up and I'll be sure to share the link with you. I'll put like a dedicated page on my website, and then send me your studio link. And then next time I'm in city on a Tuesday, I'll give you a heads up.
If you come in Tuesday, absolutely come sit in.
I will.
Class.
That'd be cool.
Great. I appreciate your time, Doug, and I appreciate you asking.
It's been fun, man.
All right,
Neal. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Neal was fun, man. That Bryan Cranston story is great. He just couldn't deal with the rewrites and getting things the last minute. And it worked out for him, right? Malcolm in the Middle, like right after that. Then he had that little tiny bit of lull, which I'm sure he was doing films and other TV shows at that time and pilots. And then he gets Breaking Bad, and he's just one of the coolest guys ever. And I love that he reflects on his career on Seinfeld, and he loves it. Like, there's some people that are too big for those past roles, and I've never seen them talk about their time on Seinfeld. So, yeah. Thank you, Neal. Lots of fun. Jersey guy. Can't wait to check out your acting studio and see you teach. That'll be a lot of fun. So your homework, Free Willy 2, it's $4 pretty much everywhere. You can always, check out just some of the clips on YouTube and let me and Jamie do the heavy lifting. I bet you Jamie's never seen this movie because he was in probably college around the time this came out, and I was young. I was a kid. Jamie's a lot older than me. Not that much older. 12, 13 years. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.